Hi, again, welcome back. My name is the Catholic Lady. I am sharing with you one of my favorite books, Great Line of God by Taylor Caldwell. Taylor Caldwell died a number of years back, and her book, this book specifically, is out of print, so you can only obtain it from a used bookstore. But perhaps with demand, someone may pick it up and decide to reprint it. So it is a wonderful story, and now we found out that Jesus healed a friend of he healed Tellus, who was a friend who was dying of cancer that Aristo had met on his voyage to Jerusalem. And now he is sharing that story with Saul in chapter 20. Saul ben Hillel said with gloomy contempt, "I am amazed that you, even a semblance of belief to..." Let's start that one over again. Saul ben Hillel said with gloomy contempt, "I am amazed that you give even a semblance of belief to the story of your Greek friend Tellus, who has a lurid reputation in Israel. Not," added Saul with a shadow of a smile, "that this is too nefarious, considering that he swindles the Romans and smuggles richly, and has been known to sell the Roman ladies marvelous rare gems, which later are revealed as worthless pebbles or polished glass. He has friends among the Roman and Jewish officials whom he bribes lavishly to overlook or conceal these rascally things. But I believe that there was an interdiction against him for 3 years in Rome. It appears he sold a Roman lady, alas, a magnificent Egyptian necklace which he alleged was of the purest gold, exquisitely enameled and set with the finest gems. Unfortunately, the Roman lady had a brother who was a senator, and he had a friend who was a jeweler, and it was discovered, after Tellus had neatly taken himself off to lands unknown, that the necklace was not only not worth 25,000 gold sesterces the lady had paid for it, but that it was of gilded brass. The ancient enamel was merely cheap paint, and the gems were flawed or imitation. I believe the price was finally determined to be worth about 5 drachmas or less, and that is the man who told you the strange story about an alleged Messiah out of the burning hills and meager valleys of Galilee and Nazareth. He says," said Aristo, "that he has now become an honest man, or to quote him directly, a more honest man." Even the grieving Saul laughed reluctantly. "I see he has not wholly committed himself, which is truly Greek. I am willing to admit that his precious Galilean rabbi may have some healing powers. Many of our poor wandering rabbis do, for they are selfless and truly holy men, in that they serve God rather than man, and keep all the commandments and judgments and sacred admonitions. You say he had told you that he had a cancer. Did you consult his physicians? Did they swear that he had that disease and that now he is mystically cured? No? It is possible that he had no cancer, and or physicians were deceived. And it is also possible that he was merely afraid that some of his crimes had been discovered and he was about to be arrested. That would be enough to give such an awesome thief pains and chills and fevers and perhaps a bloody cough. But when the danger was past, he recovered. I am giving you the choicest of explanations, my Aristo." "I only know that he appeared to be a man on the verge of death," said Aristo. "I have seen many dying men in my lifetime. I am rarely deceived. He had all the aspects. Tellus is no fool. He is a cynical man and not superstitious. Yet he is convinced that a miracle was performed on him." "A miracle performed for a light-hearted, unrepentant, and unbelieving infidel?" asked Saul, shrugging. "A thief? A famous criminal? God does not grant miracles for men who are sinners, unless they repent and say, 'God, forgive me, a sinner.' But what did your friend do? He merely had a rumor. He merely had a dream. So he lies himself, or he hies himself to the miserable rabbi of Nazareth, and he is instantly cured of his malady. He is not even a Jew. Aristo bent his head with mock humility. Yes, I comprehend. Your God disdains all but Jews, and therefore we are presumptuous in hoping or believing that he may glance at us kindly at times. Saul laughed again, a little less reluctantly than before. I am always speaking rudely and roughly, though it is not my intent. I am no diplomat, alas. You know I did not mean to insult you. I was only exposing your story to the light of day, my dear Aristo, my dear friend and tutor. Aristo was touched, remembering the younger Saul, who would blurt and then remorsefully apologize, for this older Saul had done now. Still, he said, the man was dying. I often heard his racking coughs on the ship. I saw him furtively wiping away blood from his mouth, even if he had not had a cancer, but the consumption of the lungs, it would not have been cured in a twinkling. Verily, the man was dying, and now he lives, and is well, and like a youth, and full of the joy of life and health. Why is this done for him? I do not know. But have you not always said that God moves in ways that men cannot understand? Saul smiled. I have given you my own sword, have I not? Well, you also spoke of your thief's story of the wild man of the desert, who was executed by King Herod. I met him once in the wilderness, one Jacquemin, son of 2 old Galileans, a lowly priest named Zachary and his wife Elizabeth. I was convinced that he was a madman, but he had a wizard's voice and eloquence, and could deceive even my friend, Joseph of Arimathea, who took me to see him. I admit he had an appearance of a young prophet, a manner of speaking which was overpowering, and that he was not an ignorant man, though a Galilean, and had learning and was familiar with the Pentateuch and all the other scriptures, and could quote from them. He dazzled me, as he did others, and then he offended me. Or perhaps I misunderstood his rude accent, though Joseph did not speak of that. He implied that the Messiah had already been born. Unto us a child has been born, unto us a son has been given. Now that is blasphemy. If the Messiah had been born in Jerusalem, Jerusalem would have lifted to the very heights of a ring of glory and light, and would glitter in the sun. Holiness would abound on the earth. Truth, justice, love, immortal life, and peace would have established their reign in the instant of a breath. The gates of Jerusalem would have suddenly been set with scintillating jewels, blinding in their intensity. Labor would be no more. The winds and rains would set the seed and harvest it, and the cities would be built in a second at the mere command of a voice. The Messiah would have built his new temple between one breath and another, and there would have been restored to it at once the ark, heavenly fire on the altars, the golden candlestick, and there would have been in that temple the Shekinah and the seraphim for all to see. I'm going to add a note here. The Shekinah is the cloud that God speaks through. In the journey from Egypt through the deserts, God was with them, and when he came to talk to Moses, he came down like a cloud on the mountain. They called that the Shekinah. When they built him a portable temple, once it was completed and God entered the sanctuary, a cloud, the Shekinah, rested over the top of it and over the tabernacle. And so there's a little information for you if you've never heard that word before. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'll go back. The nations of the world, hearing of these wonders, having been informed of them, and of the resurrection of the dead in accordance with the prophecies, would have poured from the 4 corners of the world into Jerusalem, heralded by angel voices, and Israel would have absorbed the world in one boundless beatitude of love, and there would be no other nations. Has this come to pass? No, said Aristo, and candidly, it does not appeal to me. I am one who prefers this world with all its injustice and vagaries and uncertainties, at least because of its capricious and unpredictable. It is interesting, whereas the world of which you speak would bore me to a longing for death, which you have said would then be unobtainable. You prefer, then, the Yetzer Hara, the impulse of evil? Oh, my Aristo, you will never change. Let us return to that Jacquemin, the Essene of the desert, the barbarian and the madman. I do not condemn the Essenes and the Zealots. My heart is with them, for do they not love God and their country and uphold the law and despise the oppressor and refuse to obey him? But that Jacquemin was a deceiver, a believer in his own phantoms. He believed that the Messiah is already among us, and that is not only folly, it is blasphemy. We punish blasphemy, adultery, and murder with death. He fled to escape it. Last year he appeared in Jerusalem heralding, he said, the coming of the Messiah, and said that he was preparing the way. He influenced many unlettered and simple men, including a goodly number of Greeks. He baptized them in water and told them that he had already baptized the Messiah, who is sinless and needs no cleansing. Blessed be his name. You see how absurd all this is? As you know, we Jews have the ritual of washing to be free of sin. Is the Messiah sinful? It is a blasphemy even to ask the foolish question. Yet that Jacquemin, whom the Greeks now call John the Baptist, had the unpardonable effrontery to say he had performed the ritual for the Messiah. For that alone he deserved death, and he received it. Aristo yawned. You Jews, he said, with a fond smile at his former pupil. You speak of your messiahs as the anointed, presumably your God, the Christus, as the Romans would call him. You think that a miracle of miracles. But as you know, our gods and our goddesses mated regularly with mortals and had a multitude of sons and daughters. And we do not marvel and contemplate the thought in ecstasy. Gods are gods, and they have the attributes of mortals as well as their venalities. And I think the thought charming and beautiful. In any event, my friend, who is a man of considerable learning, swore that the rabbi who cured him was the unknown God whom we await. Blasphemy, said Saul. Do not smile. Was not your Socrates given the hemlock cup because he blasphemed? I believe the real reason was because he urged young men to think and not meekly accept the beliefs of their fathers, their government as sacred, but to reflect for themselves. Who knows what turmoil he would have created had he been permitted to live? Good and wise men surely deserve to die, for they are alien to this world. You are not serious, of course, said Saul, with a flash of his usual deep impatience before jesting. Oh, I wish that mountebank of which your friend has spoken, as did Jacquemin the Essene, and that pretender who permits the ignorant to believe he is the Messiah, would come to Jerusalem, and I would denounce him to his face and expose him to punishment. But I heard he has already visited this city many times. Do you Jews have a command that those able to walk or ride appear in this city on your high holy days? Yes, you have told me. So that poor Nazarene from the misery and dejection of Galilee must have been here very often in his lifetime. I also heard he performed miracles here. I have heard of no such miracles, cried Saul, and then he halted. He stared at Aristo with his eyes, which were so like the blue glaze on a sword. Did your friend note his appearance? And he turned somewhat pale, and the freckles on his gaunt face were prominent. Aristo thought, then described the rabbi as his friend had told him, and as he did so, Saul's red brows became a knot over his eyes, and his long mouth whitened. What is wrong? Said Aristo. Finally, nothing, said Aristo, finally noting all this. Nothing, said Saul. I think I have seen that Nazarene, twice in reality, once in a feverish dream. I knew him for what he was, immediately, a sorcerer. Therefore he stands condemned for such a devil. He shivered, and then, to his own amazement, he felt a deep pang of grief, which had no name but seemed connected with a betrayal. Aristo was growing more bored with the conversation. They were seated in Saul's appalling little bedroom, with its earthen floor and all its pungent smells. Aristo had brought wine and cakes with him, which Saul had absently shared. The dull little lamp flickered. The day was drawing to sunset. Aristo said, "My friend told me later that the rabbi, holy or not, was not alone, that he was accompanied by disciples or followers. Among them was the son of the great and powerful Annas himself, of whom even King Herod is terrified, and whom Pilate honors above all else. Who truly rules the temple but Annas, as the Jewish elder told my friend, and who can ruin or raise men up, and who controls the treasures of the temple but Annas? Is he not also a high priest, father-in-law of the high priest in Jerusalem, one Caiaphas? Yes. You see, I inquired of these things, for then they interest me, though I confess they no longer do. Annas has a son, one Judas Iscariot, a rich young man, and he is a follower of your ragged holy rabbi." "Nonsense," said Saul. "I have heard of that son, an Essene whom his father disinherited, though his mother dotes on him and sends him rich gifts of money. Nonsense." Aristo yawned very widely now. He had stayed long over his time in Israel, because of the lady Iantha, to whom he was betrothed, and whom he adored. There was still the matter of the dowry to settle, and though Tullus now proclaimed himself a completely honorable man, he was not above shrewd dealing. Men, even with a vision, are still men, Aristo thought, smiling. He would return for his bride in 6 months, for her period of mourning for her dead husband had not yet been completed. Aristo was also certain that Tullus, that careful traitor and rascal, was doing some investigating very quietly of his prospective son-in-law. Aristo was not offended. He would have done the same, and in fact, he had already done so. He said to Saul, "You have matters of estate to settle in Tarsus. Are you not returning with me?" "I have lawyers here and agents," said Saul. "What does property matter to me? I will arrange to have it given to the temple in Tarsus, and a certain tithe for the temple in Jerusalem." Aristo stared at him as if he were mad. "It is riches," he cried. "You are a rich man, a man of power, and you give it all away? Come, my Saul, you are not demented, are you? You are not serious?" "I am not demented, and I am serious," said Saul. "Oh, gods," Aristo groaned, rolling his eyes. He had another thought. "What of your beautiful sister, Sephora, and her children? Do you not wish to leave them a fat legacy?" "Sephora has her own dowry, and she is married to riches," said Saul. Then he fell into thought. "I should like to see my dear father's tomb," he said in a sad, deep voice. "I should like to say Kaddish for him in his own temple in Tarsus. Yes, I know my sorrow will grow greater in Tarsus, but it cannot be avoided." "At least keep your house, which your father loves," said Aristo. "It will be a refuge for you in Tarsus when the world grows too much for you." "Perhaps," said Saul with indifference. But at heart he was not indifferent. He thought of the house in which he had been born, and in which was filled with loved memories. He would keep that house, for it was Sephora's home also, and she spoke of it wistfully. He said, "There is one thing of which I cannot forgive myself. I never understood my father." Aristo sighed. "Saul, Saul, do you understand me, or your sister, or your friends? Do you even understand yourself? No. Therefore do not reproach yourself for not understanding your father. It is more than possible that he did not understand you either." "I do not know why," said Saul, smiling his pale and reluctant smile, "but in some way you comfort me, as none other can. No, not even Rabban Gamaliel, nor Joseph of Arimathea. It is, probably, because I speak sensibly, said Aristo, and not in mysteries and symbols. He took his leave of Saul with affection. Saul sat alone after his friend had gone, and absently drank some of the good wine which he really did not taste, and he pondered, and there was more of the sorrow in his heart. There was dread and shadowy uneasiness, which he could not name, but which was like the haunting of great wings over his soul. And that is the end of chapter 20. Please join us again for chapter 21.